to Coors Wellness Arena. Clemson and Notre Dame gonna tip off at 9 o'clock tonight. So we are here for that. K-Mac, Kevin McCrary is over at the CLA for USC women and the UConn women. The professor, Tom Hayes, back in our studios in Columbia, along with Larkin Belton. And welcome in to Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network the day after the Super Bowl, in which the Panthers, you look at the numbers. This is why statistics oftentimes lie. You look at those numbers and you kind of shake your head, SMH, over how the Panthers lost that game yesterday, but simply the turnovers and the penalties did them in.
Well, turnovers, especially deep in their own territory. You don't turn the ball over twice there, you probably, that's 14 points off the board for Denver because Denver couldn't move the football. We may have had a 0-0 tie as far as those defenses concerned. A couple of things, and I'll hush about the Super Bowl. I thought it was a weird game plan by the Panthers. Where was the design quarterback draws? You see that Denver's ends like to get up the field. Wouldn't you think your quarterback would run up the middle at least a few times? Didn't see it at all. And you played right into Denver's hands. And there's Peyton Manning with a Super Bowl ring, guiding an offense that garnered less than 200 yards in a 60-minute ball game.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, the Panthers defense, they played well enough to get a W because, the Broncos scored on a scoop and score, and then they scored on a very short drive after, for whatever reason, Cam Newton did not go after that football. Boy, he's going to have to do a lot here over the next little while to overcome that image of not going after the football at a critical juncture of that game. And he really, I'm a media person. I believe that athletes, especially professional athletes who make millions of dollars, win or lose, you sit there and you answer the questions professionally. Don't do a Marshawn Lynch kind of deal. That's a once in a lifetime sort of thing. And he gets a pass because I think the media just kind of liked what he did. But Cam, I was very disappointed in the way he handled his post-game news conference yesterday. He could have handled that thing with a little more professionalism and a little more interest. I know the loss hurt, but you're a professional, and you're old enough to stand in there and take those questions and answer. We'll be right back. we're back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on this Monday night from Greenville. Phil Kornblut here. Professor Tom Hayes back in Columbia. K-Mac, Kevin McCrary over at the Colonial Life Arena, USC women, the Connecticut women. That's the first of our in-state doubleheader tonight. They'll tip at 7. And then here it's Clemson and Notre Dame tipping off at 9 o'clock. Notre Dame coming off a great win at home over North Carolina. What an exciting game that was. And Clemson losing at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, a much improved team. The Tigers fell behind in the second half, fought back and had a chance late. Couldn't get a shot to go late, and they end up losing on the road at Virginia Tech. So this is an important game for both of these teams as they try to work their ways into the various brackets out there. And we'll talk about what some of the experts are saying regarding the brackets today, coming up in just a little bit. If you'd like to join us, 800-956-7266, the number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com and on Twitter at sportstalksc. Love to take your calls on, of course, the Super Bowl, your reaction to the Panthers off the field. Peyton Manning's most likely his final game. I see no way he comes back. He's a smart guy. There is absolutely no reason for him to continue his pro football career. He won 200 games. He won 2 Super Bowls for 2 different teams, 5 MVP awards, all kinds of records. And what else is there for him to play for? All he does is risk serious injury, considering he's playing with a redesigned neck and spine. Why would you want to risk that since you've got those 2 rings now? You match your brother. Now you can go buy a franchise or make pizza, whatever it is he decides to do with the rest of his life, and he can go off in a blaze of glory. And, of course, the basketball. As we hit the middle part of February, every game becomes magnified. Every win is huge. Every loss is deflating. And so we'll talk about that tonight. Let's go over to the Colonial Life Arena. Welcome in Kevin McCrary, who's going to take in the USC women against the UConn women, 1 versus 2. The first game of a very big week of basketball in Columbia. USC men and LSU on Wednesday night. That's for the lead in the SEC. That'll be close to a sellout. Tonight's a sellout. USC women and Florida, another big women's game on Thursday. Then the USC men in Kentucky on Saturday, and that game is a sellout. And K-Mac, first of all, how was the ride over? I hear traffic was an absolute mess outside.
A lot of traffic. Yeah, you have to be patient making your way here. It is packed. I actually took a video of the crowd outside, and this was about around 5:15, 5:30 when I was walking up. And the line was wrapped around the building just to get in through the student entrance. So there are a lot of people here, 18,000 strong will be in this building. It's kind of a who's who. I've been walking around a little bit. Frank Martin's in the house. Saw Jerry Spurrier. I think Steve Spurrier somewhere in tow. I did not see him. A lot of people making their way to this game. It's the big game on the slate right now in Columbia.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Of course, these 2 teams played up in the stores last year, and I don't think South Carolina was ready at that particular time for the moment as the season wore on, and they got better and better, and they worked their way through the NCAA tournament. They got back to the big stage and, of course, had a chance to get to the championship game, only to fall short to Notre Dame in the semifinals. Guys, K-Mac, I believe this time they are ready for this big stage, and I don't think they're going to blink this time. I mean, they might lose to UConn. There's no question about it. UConn's a fabulous basketball team. If they lose, I think they'll lose because UConn was just the better team, not because the USC team played tight and didn't play up to its abilities.
Yeah, I think you're right. Those big games, you have to go through a few of them before you're ready for that big stage, and they weren't ready in stores. But they went to the NCAA tournament and had to win some tight games to knock off North Carolina and Florida State and that tight game against Notre Dame. So they will be ready. They're going to have a huge crowd behind them. And I know Dawn Staley's just thrilled that this kind of game can be played in Columbia for the fans that kind of got behind her program. And she built this from nothing. This is a program that might get 18,000 people to watch them in an entire season when Dawn Staley took over. And now they regularly have 10, 15,000 in the stands. So they're really thrilled to be on the stage. They've all kind of downplayed the significance of the matchup, and they're trying to take it as just another game. But we all know it's definitely not just another game. I will say this about South Carolina. They've been in some tight games this year. They've had a lot of games decided by fewer than 10 points, some tough SEC games against top 25 teams. UConn's just been steamrolling everybody. They have certainly not struggled to their 22-0 mark, and this will be their biggest test, both these teams' biggest test, but I think South Carolina has been battle-tested more this season in terms of competition.
Well, the fans are going to be treated to some great individual talent. Breanna Stewart, National Player of the Year. Of course, at South Carolina, Asia Wilson, who's having a great year. Just go up and down the lineup at South Carolina and look at their players. And they've got, Coach Mitchell. They've got three people, not guys, three ladies, young women. Any of those three could walk away with SEC Player of the Year honors and national honors as well, depending on how far this team goes in the postseason.
Yeah, and I thought it was impressive when Mitchell went down in that Kentucky game with the back injury of the hard shot when she landed on the floor. That was a good Kentucky team that kept coming at them. They had other people come off the bench, guards come off the bench like Tina Roy and Cuevas and Sessions. They all filled in admirably. So they're a deep team. Dawn Staley can go to her bench. But, yeah, they have that trio in Tiffany Mitchell, the two-time SEC Player of the Year, Asia Wilson, who in her sophomore year has really stepped up, and then, of course, Elena Coates now a junior. Inside, those two girls, they just dominate inside. And as Wilson said, they know that there's nobody up there with them, as she put it. They have that advantage to play above everybody else on the court, and they use that to their advantage. And they've really dominated inside.
And, the interesting thing about this team, though, I think probably the maturation of Coates during the offseason when she played with one of the American teams, I think overseas, I think her game has stepped up, and they've needed that because now they got a strong Twin Towers effect, and it'll be interesting to see how Connecticut will try to shut off the big girls inside, because that's what I would think probably if I'm coaching, if I'm Gino Auriemma, that's what I'm going to do, which means that if you're Tiffany Mitchell and Kadisha Sessions, the senior backcourt, this may be your time to shine. You may have to carry the team early to open up some, and Tina Roy, for that matter, coming off the bench, three-point specialist, to open up some avenues to get the ball inside to the big people.
Yeah, they're going to have to knock down shots and make free throws. To beat UConn, you have to do everything right. You can't make a lot of mistakes. You have a paper-thin margin for error. And it's a good thing you made, Pro, about the international ball. In fact, all three of them played at different levels of international ball with Mitchell, Asia Wilson, and Elena Coates all played internationally in some form or fashion over the summer. Of course, Dawn Staley coaches some of those teams every year, and that's been a huge benefit. These guys have played together for a while. Wilson and Coates grew up together. I like Wilson's line after the Kentucky game. She said they've been playing together since they had to use rubber bands to hold their socks up. So they know each other well. There's that bond and that chemistry. And that's how you win 22 straight games. That's how you become the number 2 team. But we know, guys, there's a big mountain between number 2 and number 1 in women's college basketball. And they're going to have to climb a long way to get over that hump tonight.
All right, K-Mac, thank you, man. We'll check back with you in a little bit. It's going to be awfully loud inside the Colonial Life Arena tonight with 18,000 cheering on the USC women, hoping for the win tonight. I guess it would be an upset. I haven't checked the line on this thing, I would imagine. With Connecticut's winning streak and number 1 ranking, they're somewhat favored, even though they're on the road. The winner will come out of this thing with the label as the best team in the country for now. And should they, whoever wins tonight, they win their game later in the week, then they'll be ranked number 1 next week. We will talk about Clemson, Notre Dame, take your phone calls and more coming up. Coming up here tonight, it's Clemson and Notre Dame. The Tigers 14-9, 7-4 in the ACC. Notre Dame 16-7, 7-4 in the ACC. And, of course, everything has been altered in the ACC race with Louisville being ineligible for postseason play. So you take them out of the equation. So North Carolina is the number one team in the league in terms of postseason. Virginia's 2, Miami's 3, and then Clemson and Notre Dame are right there in 4th. So tonight's winner will emerge alone in 4th place. Pittsburgh and Duke are next at 6 and 4. So it tells you how important this game is for both teams. As I mentioned, Notre Dame coming off a great win at home over North Carolina, and the Tigers losing to Virginia Tech on the road on Saturday. Landry Noko had a great game Saturday for the Tigers. He had 17 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 blocks. And they'll need that kind of performance from him tonight against an always talented Notre Dame team. Zach Auguste inside at 6'10", 240, averaging a double-double at 14 and 10. He gets some help inside from V.J. Beecham, who's 6'8", 200. All 5 Notre Dame starters average in double figures, so they have great balance. You can't slough off anybody and not expect them to score against you. To the phones we go. Let's go to JC in Columbia. First up this week on Sports Talk. JC, how are you? Welcome in.
Hey, guys. How are you guys tonight?
We're doing fine. Good to have you with us.
I just wanted to comment on the Super Bowl last night. I was kind of pulling with the Panthers to win, but, and I got quite a few friends. They coming up with all these excuses about the offensive coordinator, but they just got it handed to them, dude. Denver's defense just showed up and played ball, and it is what it is. They lost, no matter what kind of play scheme to come up with. I really don't think they could have beat them, defensively wise. You know what I'm saying? So my hat's off to Denver. They played a good game.
It's hard to beat a great defense when it's at the top of its game, and obviously Denver was at the top of its game last night, and Von Miller was just spectacular. The Panthers seldom could get their receivers free down the field. A couple of times Newton was able to hang in there and complete some passes down the field, but not very often. They kept him uncomfortable all night long, Pro.
Well, the interesting thing is that I realize now that Denver did their homework in this vein. Cam Newton still has an elongated delivery. He's not a 1-2-3 step back quick release passer. So that's really not altogether in their repertoire a lot of times. So if he's going to backpedal, okay, we're going to go after him because he's got these 5- and 7-step drops, which is why, and I'm not getting on the offensive coordinator. I'm just thinking early on in the contest, you got to call some quarterback draws early to at least make that rush think he may come out of there. As it was, it seemed to pin their ears back from the time they came out of the locker room to the last whistle.
Yep. And you had to like the way Denver came out on its first possession of the game, too, and went right down the field and got points and sort of made a little bit of a statement right there. Back in a moment. we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Hope you're having a great night. Thank you for joining us tonight, wherever you happen to be dialed in. And we have officially put football to bed for another year. Doggone it. Hate to see it go away. But you know what? We all need a change from time to time. And it's time to get focused on basketball, baseball. Spring football will be here soon enough. That'll be starting up in about a month. And, of course, recruiting never goes to sleep. There'll be junior days galore coming up, unofficial visits galore coming up, and we'll keep you up to date as best we can on all that. 800-956-7266. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com and on Twitter at sportstalksc. Check out the website, sportstalksc.com. Coverage from the CLA tonight, as well as from the BSW, also known as the Bon Secours Wellness Arena. I guess that's the BSWA, the Biswa. We'll have post-game coverage of Clemson's game against Notre Dame for you tonight as well. A couple of quick notes, and we'll get back to your phone calls, but some interesting things going on out there I want to pass along to you. First of all, the basketball polls this week, USC not in the AP top 25, but the Gamecocks are 20th by the coaches. Villanova is number 1 in each poll. Maryland is number 2. Oklahoma is 3. And Iowa and Xavier flip-flop 4 and 5. Kansas is 6. Virginia is 7. North Carolina and Michigan State flip-flop 8 and 9. And West Virginia is 10th in both polls. I got a chance to see Miami yesterday. I went to the Georgia Tech-Miami game in Atlanta, and Miami got a nice road win. They look good. They could do some damage in the postseason. Joe Lunardi in his bracket today has got South Carolina in at number 7 against Valpo, a number 10 seed, 7 versus 10 in Des Moines. And let's see, Jerry Palm had the Gamecocks as a 7 seed against Syracuse, the number 10 seed in Brooklyn. So, I think if I were South Carolina, the best area would be Des Moines, because you don't want to play Syracuse in Brooklyn. You would be at a distinct home court disadvantage with all those Syracuse fans there.
I would agree with you at one point, and then I disagree with you. Depending on who the other team is, I would rather play Syracuse there than to know I have to face Kansas if I win in the second game.
True.
In that bracket. It'll be interesting to see how they play.
If I'm South Carolina, I don't care who I play in that second game. I just want to win that first game for the first time since 1973, win an NCAA tournament game. I don't care if I have to play John Wooden and the UCLA Bruins of 1974. You know, just get me to the second round for a change on the winning side.
Well,
a couple of other things. Yeah, a couple of other things. Furman is losing running backs coach Norval McKenzie. He's going to Arkansas State. This according to Thayer Evans of Sports Illustrated. And Grady Brown, former USC secondary coach, is interviewing for a position at Kentucky, the defensive backs coaching position. Derek Ansley left UK for Alabama. Cats Illustrated is reporting that Grady Brown will interview for that job at Kentucky. Corey Peoples, former USC defensive back out of Bishopville, now the defensive backs coach at Charleston Southern, has been chosen to participate in the NFL NCAA Coaches Academy later on this month in Tampa. And sad news to pass along, the wife of former Clemson star quarterback Homer Jordan has passed away after fighting cancer. So our condolences to Homer Jordan and his family, as Tim Beret put that word out today. Back to the phones we go, 800-956-7266. Ronnie in North Augusta, welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
Hey, Phil, how you and Pro doing tonight?
We are doing just fine. Hope you are too.
I want to make a comment about the Super Bowl, and then I think you and Pro are both old enough. Y'all aren't old as me, but I think both of you are old enough to understand my thinking on this. But I think Cam Newton got very confused before the game even started, because all the years that I watched Superman growing up, he always went in the phone booth and came out as Superman. Cam came out as Lois Lane last night.
Oh man.
I thought that
how
was.
about I thought you were gonna say, Ronnie, there's so many cell phones anymore. You can't find a phone booth.
I'll tell you, I don't even hardly watch. Phil, I'll have to say this: your Packers would have given them a better ball game. Carolina was very one dimension in that game, but Denver played. Their defense was as good, I think, as I've ever seen in pro football with the speed and the size that they have. But all of the Cam Newton stuff that he did, I just can't. If he's going to do that, he's got to be man enough to come in there and do his interview at the end of the ball game. He certainly don't mind showing out when he's winning a ball game, but the true Cam Newton came out as soon as things didn't go his way last night. And I couldn't have enjoyed it anymore. Y'all have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. I think that that's something that the organization should really look at and have a sit down with him. He has to understand that as the NFL MVP and as the face of that franchise, you got to answer the questions after the bad days. And, the Marshawn Lynch thing has worn thin. Okay, that became a circus and a sideshow, and I think the media kind of enjoyed the way he did things as much as they enjoyed trying to ask him the questions, knowing he wasn't going to say anything. Okay, but that was a one individual sort of deal, and I'm not saying Cam Newton went Marshawn Lynch yesterday. I mean, he answered some questions. He did. And maybe he answered them as thoroughly as he could in that particular moment. For whatever reason there, he shut it down and got up and walked away after about 2.5 minutes.
Well, I would say this. Marshawn Lynch or anybody that plays any other position, they can carry on those shenanigans. But you're the quarterback. You get paid the big bucks to take the accolades and to take the grief.
Mm-hmm.
So that position, whether people like it or not, is the end all and tell all. So if you're an NFL quarterback, especially when you've just been crowned the MVP, which I've always thought was a bad luck thing to do it 24 hours for the Super Bowl anyway, you got to stand in and answer the questions.
Yeah, I agree. I hate to be piling on Cam Newton, but I mean, there's reason to. He played terribly for the most part. He didn't go after that fumble late in the game that could have maybe given them a chance. If he recovers that fumble, at the very least, they can kick the ball away, maybe get a stop and get the ball back with a chance to go down and win. He fumbles that ball, doesn't get it, and he sets up Denver for the killing score, and he has to bear responsibility for that. Ron Rivera, I heard a comment from him or somebody read a quote. He might have just said this off the cuff or without having seen the tape. He said that maybe Cam Newton thought the ball was going to hop up, and he was waiting for it to come up off a bounce. But I think, every football player knows that ball's loose and it's at your feet, you're diving at it. Or if it's in front of your face like it was for him, you got to dive. You can't sit there and wait for it to come back to you. You got to go get it, especially in that situation. So that was a terrible, terrible mistake on his part. And of course, he compounded it with the way things went in the post-game interviews. So he's going to have to deal with that, and I imagine the organization will have a sit down with him and say, hey, we got to do better. We got to do better as our leader and as our quarterback. You got to do better in the future because, there's going to be more great wins in the future, but there's going to be more disappointing losses in the future as well. So you got to stand in there and take the heat along with the praise that comes with the big wins. 800-956-7266. We'll be back. Take more of your phone calls here on Sports Talk from Greenville and Columbia in a moment. our Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network from Greenville and Columbia, 800-956-7266, the number. Let's get back to our phone calls. We welcome into Sports Talk the de facto mayor of the city of Charleston, the bad boy by the bear, the ninja of the night, the Pontiff of the Port City, the queen of the Cowboy Crybabies, and just announced, don't know if you've heard this, the person who will sing the national anthem prior to the Super Bowl in Houston in 2017. It's not Jim Rome. He's got a very popular sports talk show. No, this is Jay Rome. What's up, Jerome?
Yeah, I don't pick fights with quarterbacks either.
That's very smart.
Resume. But I'm still on lockdown, so it was a good opportunity for me to feel just a little bit of liberation by being able to call you and say, I'm rooting for Peyton Manning, and I'm going with the Broncos, though. So, but what do I know? I'm just a regular guy, okay?
You need a sports talk show. Have you ever thought about going on the air in Charleston with a regular sports talk show so that you can share your knowledge?
No how, no way. It'll never happen. Hey, I just have to. This is my calling, and this is what I have to live with. So I take the opportunities when they come.
Do you consider it? Do you consider it a gift? Do you consider it a gift that you have that perhaps others don't?
Yes, it's a gift from God. It was probably passed down to me through my father because we used to talk sports every now and then. You know, we had some deep conversations. But hey, I think it's a gift from God. Hey, I just couldn't live with myself if I let Peyton Manning lose his very last game because I think he's going to retire, and I think he should retire. And you know, Cam Newton, he's got a little growing up to do. Dance now, ballerina. Come on. Let me see you dance. Let me see the dabbing and the, they were really making me sick with this Panther Nation. Oh, dabbing. They thought that it was a birthright. They had this thing locked up. But you know what? I always believe in my heart, you have to respect your opponent. You never dismiss someone or anyone. You know, you should make time for people. Try to be kind to the other person. Do that. You know, try to be humble. Don't come in with this Panther Nation. I said, where did they become the Panther Nation, man? Huh? Where does that come from?
Look, they were excited. It was their second Super Bowl in their history, which, you know what? That's not bad. In 20 years of existence, 2 Super Bowls. I was looking back over the list. I mean, you know, my team, the Packers, we went 30 years between Super Bowl appearances. It's not a granted. It doesn't happen for most teams very often. So to do it twice in 20 years is a pretty good achievement, and they will be back. I mean, if they hold this team together, and I think they plan to make Josh Norman their franchise player if they don't reach a long-term agreement with him. They're going to spend the money and do the things they need to do to hold this thing together, and they have the franchise quarterback that you have to have. They will be back in a position to get to the Super Bowl many times in the years to come.
They got to keep Benjamin healthy, though, because their mediocre receiving core outside of the tight end was exposed last night.
Von Miller, it's time to get paid. Johnny, back the truck up. It's time to pay Von Miller, okay? Just remember that. Back the truck up, John.
I think he made a few dollars for himself yesterday, no question about it.
Yeah,
all right, J-Rome, thank you so much.
That's interesting, Corn, because, you know, in that draft, what was it, 2010, 2011, Cam Newton was the number 1 pick. Number 2 pick, Von Miller, Denver.
Yeah. And you know what? It paid off for both teams.
Oh, yeah.
You could say that was a win-win situation. Back to the phones quickly before the break. Joseph up in Indian Land. Welcome to Sports Talk tonight. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not much.
Have you got any update on what's the LSU game for Wednesday night? Does it look like it's going to be a sellout?
It has not been announced as a sellout yet. I imagine between now and Wednesday, they're going to push it in that direction. That's a 7 o'clock tip. I would think that at the very least they're going to hit 14,000, 15,000. I would expect a big student turnout for that game. You've got the battle for first place in the SEC. You got all that talent on LSU's team, some of which will be moving right on to the NBA next year. So if it's not a full house, it'll be close.
Okay. Because I'm looking at this week here. we're gonna look back these three games, starting with the night there with ladies game. This might be the biggest week in Carolina basketball in quite a long time for the men and the women.
Yeah, you've got to go back to you've never really had the men and women at this level together that I can recall. As far as important basketball games like this, I mean, they had some back in the Eddie Fogler days. Then you got to go all the way back probably to Frank McGuire's 68, 69, 70 run to find games like this. Back in a moment. All right, we'll get back out to K-Mac at the Colonial Life Arena in just a moment. Get a final scene setter from him before they tip it off. Some recruiting updates. Defensive end Logan Rudolph. He's the brother of Mason Rudolph, who was pretty much looked over by USC and Clemson when he came through a couple of years ago. Not the case with Logan Rudolph. He's got about 30 offers. USC has offered. Clemson is showing interest, but has not yet offered. Some other offers for him include Oklahoma State, Arizona State, North Carolina, Auburn, Florida, Miami, Florida State, Penn State, Michigan. He's not narrowed his list. No current favorites. He'll get down to around a top 10 this summer, then take his 5 officials in the fall. He went to a USC for an unofficial on January 30th. Got a chance to meet Muschamp and the rest of the coaches. Said he got a good idea of what they're going to try and do, and he thinks they've got a chance to be successful in the future. He also plays tight end, but everyone likes him as a defensive end. He had 15 sacks last season. He's going to Stillwater on Thursday to see his brother, and that may turn into an unofficial visit, and he might meet with some of the coaches. He's also got unofficial planned for Florida, Florida State, Tennessee, Miami, and possibly Georgia. He's going to graduate in December, enroll in college in January. USC Sunday offered defensive back Ambry Thomas of Detroit, and on Saturday offered offensive lineman Rancho Santa Margarita, California. And defensive back Tank Robinson of Lake Marion was offered by Virginia Tech Saturday, went up there for junior day. He's got USC and Clemson offers at this point, along with many others. All right, over to the Colonial Life Arena. K-Mac about to watch 1 versus 2. How's it looking over there, K-Mac? If you can hear me. I'm not sure he can hear me.
I can barely hear you. I can't hear you. It is loud in here.
Okay. Don't go Cam Newton on me. Tell me more. All right, Larkin, let's take him down. I do not think he can hear me well enough to be able to go back and forth.
I believe he's been rendered deaf.
It sounded
I guess Corn the stat to throw out at people who may be at home listening to us. I think I have these figures right. UConn has won 59 games in a row. South Carolina has won 45 games in a row at home. What does that mean? Tonight, something's got to give.
Some streak is coming to an end. See, the thing is, when you got 18,000 women and young girls all screaming at the top of their lungs.
And men. There's some men in there.
There's a few men in there, but I've been to their games. It's mostly women and young girls from what I've seen. And they make an entirely different pitch of noise than at a men's game. It's just different. It's not the kind of a roar type of thing. It's more of a screeching, which can also be deafening to some degree. Anyway, we'll catch back up with him at halftime when it's quieter, and we'll be back from Greenville and Columbia in a moment.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
And we're back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network here in Greenville, where I'm sitting next to the great Bob Schuster and his fans all across the state saying, I know that name, Bob Schuster. We don't see or hear as much from Bob anymore. He's more behind the scenes now as a highly paid executive for ESPN and working the camera. Going to work the camera tonight for the Clemson game. So those great close-ups of the Tigers, courtesy of Bob Schuster. Of the cheerleaders. That doesn't surprise me at all. Man's in the Florence Hall of Fame. How about that? The Florence Athletic Hall of Fame, along with who's in it? Is Don Hood in that thing? Whitey Jordan's in it. Yeah, yeah. And Bob Schuster, a great high school pole vaulter. Is that what you were? Distance. I'm sorry. A miler. What was your best mile? Were you Jim Ryan like? 4:35. That gets you probably last place in the Olympics these days, huh? Yeah. Good to see you. Bob Schuster, always a pleasure to hang out with him. Let's see. It's 4-4 in the first quarter between South Carolina and Connecticut. So it's off to a red-hot start. Let's jump back to our phones. And coming up, we're going to hear from Frank Martin, who met with the media today to talk about his team's big week with LSU and Kentucky coming up. Kent's in Hartsville. Welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
How you fellows tonight?
Good, sir. How you doing?
I just want to weigh in on the Cam Newton thing a little bit. When I first woke up this morning, started seeing all the news where he'd walked off the press conference and all, I was the first one wanted to jump on him and dig in. But then I seen Peyton Manning on the Today Show talking about how humble Cam was and how congratulatory. So started digging a little deeper today, and why would they put the winning team and the losing team press conferences side by side? Because if you'll listen to them, the Broncos players, if you'll listen, they were hollering over to Cam why he was trying to do his press conference. Not saying he was right, but I don't think that was very good planning on somebody's part.
Crow, did you catch that? I didn't notice that in the post-game coverage I saw. I'm not saying Kent's wrong, but
no, but I couldn't tell much of anything because I listened to the post-game on the radio. I did not listen to it. I did not see it on the television as it was going on.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't really answer that question, Ken, if indeed that would be unusual. They don't normally do the interview simultaneously. Because, first of all, reporters want to be able to get to both camps and talk to players on both sides. They wouldn't be able to do that ordinarily. I will say that after the initial round of interviews take place, the main interview sessions, they'll open up both locker rooms simultaneously, and there could be interviews going on in that fashion. Interesting. All right, appreciate your phone call. We'll be right back. 8-4, UConn leading South Carolina, 4:45 to go in the first quarter. USC on a 3-minute and 28-second scoring drought. Wilson and Coates have the points for the Gamecocks. Stewart has 4 for UConn. In the ACC tonight, besides our game here, it's Louisville at Duke. That game just getting underway in Durham. That should be a good one. Tomorrow, Pittsburgh at Miami, North Carolina at Boston College, Virginia Tech at Virginia. Wednesday, Wake Forest at Georgia Tech. And Thursday, Florida State at Syracuse. No games in the SEC tonight. In the SEC on Tuesday, Auburn at Tennessee, Ole Miss at Florida, Georgia at Kentucky, and Arkansas at Mississippi State. And Wednesday, it's LSU at USC, Texas A&M at Alabama, and Missouri at Vanderbilt. By the way, the latest RPI from Warren Nolan, which is an RPI I like to look at. South Carolina going into this week now at number 25, moving up 3 spots. The number 2 team in our state in the RPI is Coastal Carolina. They are red hot. They are moving towards the top in the Big South. And Coastal Carolina this week checks in at let's see. You know what? I misspoke terribly. Clemson is number 2. Yeah, Clemson is number 2 at 83, moving up 5 spots despite their loss on Saturday. It's the College of Charleston, which is 3rd in our state, number 88, moving up 7 spots, 7-5 in the Colonial Athletic. Coastal Carolina, however, as I stated, is a red hot in its league, and the Chanticleers moving up towards the top in the Big South. I think they're just a game or so out of first place in the Big South. Let me take a quick check of that. They're 9-4, and Asheville is 10-3. Yeah, their RPI is 172, so I was wrong about that. Actually, Winthrop's RPI is 171, but Coastal's won 7 in a row, and they're 9-4 in the league. Winthrop is 8-4 in the league. In the Southern Conference, Furman is in 4th at 8-4. Chattanooga leads at 10-1. Wofford is 5th at 7-4. The Atlantic Sun upstates in last place at 2-7. North Florida leads that league, along with Jacksonville at 7-2. In Colonial, Charleston is 7-5. Lead that.
And we're looking at some of the scores that's going on right now in the ACC. Louisville leading 13th ranked, make that Duke leading 13th ranked Louisville 13-8. That game being played at this time in at the Durham, North Carolina. As far as South Carolina is concerned, South Carolina off again. We said, if anything, they could not get off to these ragged, slow starts. They're doing it again. They find themselves behind number 1 UConn 10-4 with 3 minutes, 49 seconds left in the first quarter in that ball game at the Colonial Life Arena.
You're able to watch it on the screen there in the studio. Is UConn, are they going inside and scoring inside, or are the points coming from the outside?
They're driving. They're driving the basketball. Very much more aggressive than South Carolina. South Carolina already has 2 shot clock violations because they're standing around hoping that someone would take the shot. And UConn is just driving it to the hoop. And it's now 12-4 UConn in the ball game.
8-0 run for the Huskies over the last 2 minutes and 35 seconds as they built the lead to 12-4. Stewart, Tuck, and Jefferson each with 4 points, 3:19 to go in the first quarter. We're going to hear from USC basketball coach on the men's side, Frank Martin, coming up in a little bit. Also, Mick Mixon, the voice of the Panthers. They just landed back in Charlotte, and we're going to hook up him in a little bit, get his thoughts about what happened yesterday and the future for the Panthers. Looking forward to the 2016 season. You know, when you play in the Super Bowl, Pro, you don't have a very long off season. Here it is, basically the middle of February. So you get March, April, May, June, and you get about 4.5 months to get healthy again and get ready for the next season if you play in the Super Bowl. And it's a lot easier if you're the Broncos and coming off the win and feeling good about everything versus the Panthers. Now they're going to kind of be a little gloom and doom here for a week to 10 days to get over this thing, and then they'll kind of get their minds refocused and get ready for next season.
And, of course, some hard decisions have to be made for the Panthers. Their offensive line. They get Benjamin back at wide out. And it'd be interesting to see if Davis goes another season with those surgical knees, because that's going to be a key to what happens to the Panthers next year as well. Corn, you talked about hearing from Frank Martin a little bit later on. And again, I know this falls on deaf ears, but I'm going to say it again. I've always had this feeling, especially among writers, the Southeastern Conference, we hear about their football. They can't be good in basketball. That's impossible for this conference to be good at both, even though they've won 3 championships in the last decade, I think 2 by Kentucky. But the interesting thing is this. I saw some national writers say South Carolina is a nice story, but they're getting ready to lose 4 in a row. They'll lose to Georgia on the road, Texas A&M on the road, LSU, and Kentucky at home. You beat the number 8 team on their home floor in front of a capacity crowd, and you drop out of the AP poll. Yes, you lost to Georgia, but Georgia is ranked 66th in the RPI. Doesn't mean much till you look at Wichita State, who dropped from 21, but still in the top 25 at number 25 after losing to Illinois State on the road, and their RPI is 119. There's no explanation for that other than we've known all along the AP, especially if you're one of the chosen few, is a popularity contest, and good they have a tournament, because if they did, the Southeastern Conference probably wouldn't be invited to it. Here's the other key point. South Carolina and LSU will play Wednesday night for the right to be called, at least for a few days, the SEC leader. Neither one of those teams are ranked in the AP poll. Explain that to me. Which means to me that the SEC, again, is undervalued. If you're not Kentucky, you have a hard time getting ranked.
Well, I think what's hurt South Carolina in the minds of the basketball people who vote and follow it very closely is they don't believe South Carolina's played much of a schedule. The game against Texas A&M was their first game against a top 50 RPI team this year, and they won that game. So their RPI, their strength of schedule has not been good to this point. Now it's going to move up significantly after they play LSU tomorrow night or Wednesday night, and then they play Kentucky on Saturday, combined with playing Texas A&M the other day. All of a sudden, that strength of schedule is going to look much better. But I think some people nationally probably held that against the Gamecocks, and then they went and lost to Georgia, and they said, see, we told you, they're not all that. They've got a nice record, but it's cosmetic. They haven't played anybody. They haven't beaten anybody of any consequence.
But, the interesting thing about that is if you gave Kentucky South Carolina's schedule, you think they wouldn't be ranked? Sure they would.
Well,
here's the other thing. Georgia has had wins against top RPI teams. South Carolina, for instance, some of the teams they beat are not in the top 50 RPI because why? Because South Carolina beat them and they dropped. I mean, so it's mind-boggling to me. It really
All right,
is.
end of the quarter, it's 17-8. Well, 1 second to go in the quarter. UConn's up 17-8. You think this is sort of the reversal of the national championship football game where Gamecock fans had to pull for Clemson, right, for the home state pride, or any Tiger fans pulling for the USC women to beat Connecticut, if they even care. Because, just women's basketball. But still, it is 1 versus 2. All right, we'll be right back. All right, not a good start for UConn or for USC against UConn. UConn up 17-8 at the end of a quarter. UConn 7 of 14 from the floor. USC shooting 33%, has not taken a free throw. 6 turnovers, for USC in that opening quarter. Also got out rebounded 9-7. Outscored in the paint 12-6. Outscored fast break points 4-0. Pretty much out everything statistically in that first quarter.
Yeah, and the key point is they're playing like the stage is too big for them, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key points to any basketball game is to send messages early. Breanna Stewart has gone to the basket about 3 or 4 times, pell-mell, with little or no contact. She's got to get hammered every time she goes in there. You send a message. I mean, you got to get physical with her. It's just like Frank Martin in his post game said the other day that Sindarius Thornwell missed his first shot. Then he got an open shot, and he didn't take it, and he passed it off. And he said, I just asked Sid. I said, Sid, are you scared? Well, then next time shoot the ball. Because this is what you have to do. In other words, the stage can't be too big for you. You're out here playing. You got to play like the stage isn't that big for you.
Yeah, I agree. Just looking at a tweet here from David Cloninger, who covers a lot of USC women's basketball, and said they have no semblance of offense in that first half. Now, I mean, is it just the pressure that Connecticut's defense is putting on them? Are they just taking them out of their rhythm? And here you see the case of a defense dictating to an offense what it will not do.
No, it's where the team is not taking the open shot. It's almost like they're trying to force the ball inside. As I said before, when you play Connecticut, what were they going to try to do? They're going to try to neutralize your big people. So you have to send a message that you're going to shoot from outside and you got to come out and guard me. If you don't do that, they'll just continue to pack it in on your big people. And that's what they've done so far in this ball game.
All right, coming up after the break, we'll hear from Frank Martin, who was at the basketball game tonight. But earlier today, he met with the media to talk about his team and preview what's ahead for USC, LSU on Wednesday night, and then Kentucky on Saturday afternoon. And, what can you hope for there if you're South Carolina? I mean, obviously, you'd love to get a sweep. That would be a perfect world, at least a split. And that would, you don't want to obviously lose both games. So I guess they think about it. Let's take it one game at a time, get that LSU win, and then worry about Kentucky when they come in on Saturday. But a big opportunity, Frank Martin's team, to make a statement with these next 2 home games. So we'll hear from him coming up. Now, UConn leaving no doubt right now. It's number one team in the country. 6:27 to go in the half. UConn's up 25-12 over number 2 ranked South Carolina. Nobody has scored more than 2 points for South Carolina besides Aja Wilson, who's 3 for 3 with 3 rebounds and 6 points. Stewart having her normal big game. She's got 11 points so far and 3 rebounds for UConn. USC shooting just 6 of 17 from the floor. That's 35%, and has yet to go to the foul line. Tells me they're not being aggressive. They have they're 0 for 2 from 3, but apparently not attacking the rim at all and not drawing any fouls at this point. Only 3 fouls called in the game total, only 1 on UConn. So the Huskies up 25-12. Now, Wednesday, South Carolina men take on LSU for the lead in the SEC, the outright lead in the SEC. USC put itself in a position to do that by winning at Texas A&M on a Saturday. LSU right now leads the league at 8-2. Then South Carolina 7-3, and Kentucky is 7-3. Texas A&M is 7-3. So I guess technically, if Kentucky wins tomorrow night, Kentucky plays Georgia at home tomorrow night, they would be 8-3. And if South Carolina wins Wednesday, they would be 8-3. So they would not have the outright lead, but they would have a share of first place if that were to happen, with a chance to get the outright lead on Saturday against Kentucky. So a big week ahead for Frank Martin, as he talked about it earlier today.
You get on that airplane when you win a game on the road, and that was a high-level game on Saturday. That was 2 real good teams coming off losses where neither one was going to give in. And you're so proud of your guys, and you feel good, and you think, like, we got this figured out. And then you wake up yesterday morning, and you're like, okay, let me get some coffee. Let me put this computer on. And then you start watching Ben Simmons and Blakeney and Quarterman and Hornsby, and you're like, my God, what do we do? It's ever since they've gotten Hornsby and Victor back, they got their maturity on their team. And as that has started to infiltrate into those young guys, now you have a deeper team that's playing much better. And so not only are they a very talented team, now they're a team that's being led by guys that have been through it, that understand, and they're playing real good. So LSU is going to be a handful, matchup nightmare for everybody, because their center, power forward, is just, he's just a dynamic player. And then obviously later in the week you got Kentucky, which I haven't even paid attention to yet. But like I said, fun week.
Frank, since you come here, you've talked about winning a conference championship one day. You guys are in position to do that. Do you look around at the standings and the teams that you're going to be playing?
No, I don't. I mean, obviously I know where we're at, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't know that we're not playing for sole possession of first place on Wednesday. I'm aware of all that. But I'm going to give you my first year as a head coach. We're 8-2 in the Big 12, sole possession of first place. And I kind of paid attention to that, and I went back and I kind of felt good about it. I was like, wow, how about we're leading the Big 12? We're 8-2. We only got 6 games to go. God, we got a chance to win this thing. We lost 4 in a row. And 8-2 all of a sudden is 8-6, and you feel pretty good about where you're at, and you feel pretty good about postseason. And 4 games later, now, and I'm young and don't understand. Now I'm paying attention to all these so-called talking heads. Today we're in the bubble. Yesterday we're out of the bubble. Today we're in. Today. And I sat back. I said, my God, this is all irrelevant here. We got 2 games to play. Let's figure out a way to go win at Iowa State. That's all we got to worry about. And we did. And then we played Colorado at home. So let's just figure out a way to beat Colorado. And we did. And we end up 10-6 and figured out a way to get to the NCAA tournament. So there'll be times for all that, Dave. Right now it's all about LSU. And do I know that if we win Wednesday, we're in first place? Yeah, of course I know that. And our players know that also. 20 years ago, you can omit certain things from kids. Every one of you in this room will put something on Twitter that they're going to read about that game being for first place. You understand what I'm saying? They know. They don't need me to tell them. They know. It's my job to get them ready to win the game. That's what we try to do.
You called it a matchup nightmare, and obviously everybody starts with Ben Simmons. But what is it that LSU does that is so special?
They've got a 6'6" point guard, a 6'4" real good scoring, and the point guard is an NBA point guard in Quarterman. Hornsby is a 6'4" guy that can really, really score, and he's a fifth-year senior. Blakeney is a projected NBA first-round pick. Those are the guys around them. And now you got a 6'10" guy that when he feels like scoring is going to score. But he's dynamic at passing the ball. So now their 6'10" guy is getting those guys that are very talented scorers open shots because of his passing ability. So trying to figure out how you want to minimize the damage is what you're trying to do. And, part of it is offensively, we got to be good. Here's where they're real difficult to deal with. You miss a shot, Ben Simmons gets a rebound. It's 4 Greyhounds and an unbelievable passer bringing the ball up the court. And so you say, okay, well, go match up with Ben Simmons. Okay, who are you going to put on him? Your point guard in the open court? Okay, so now one of your big guys is guarding Hornsby in the corner. So now if he's not there, he's going to shoot it in the basket. And if he's there, he's going to drive by him. So they put you in an unbelievable dynamic. And that's just on a missed shot, let alone a turnover. It's they're highly skilled, highly athletic. And that's why they're in first place in our league.
Frank, you mentioned that your guys know what Wednesday is about. But is there a different challenge for you and your staff? Because they haven't been in this situation before.
All I've told them is pressure is when you're trying to survive. There's pressure when you're trying to survive. When you don't know where you're going to eat your next meal, that's pressure. When you don't know how you're going to pay your next bill, that's pressure. When you're in a place where you're competing for first place, we've been where we were trying to survive. We should be ecstatic about the opportunity. That's all I've talked to our guys about, to stay in that place mentally. We don't need a superhuman effort. We don't need to be a team that we're not. We don't need to play above our capabilities. We just got to stay connected with who we are and stay in the moment, pay attention to the principles that we're going to put in place to go into the game and just be free. Just compete at a high level and be free. Be confident and be free. And that's the only thing that I've talked to them about.
All right, Frank Martin from his presser today. All of it's up on our website, sportstalksc.com. The Gamecocks to take on LSU, and the reigning SEC player of the week, or in this case, freshman of the week, Ben Simmons, 6'10" forward from Australia, who's averaging over 18 points, 11 rebounds per game, and, of course, being touted as the potential #1 pick in the draft coming up later on this summer. So you get a chance to see a great player. South Carolina right now, and looking ahead to the SEC tournament, and you stay in the top 4 spots, and you get the double bye. So if South Carolina can hang in there and finish in the top 4, they won't play in Nashville until the game's on Friday. The tournament will begin with one game on Wednesday, March 9th. Remember now, they've got Missouri out of the tournament, so the number 11 seed's going to get a bye. 12 and 13 will begin the tournament. Then there'll be 4 games on Thursday, then the quarterfinals on Friday. That's what you want to do if you're South Carolina, be in that top 4. All right, everything to hook up with the voice of the Panthers here for a couple of minutes. Mick Mixon, we hope to have him in just a moment. 35-25, UConn leading South Carolina, 12 seconds left in the half. And pro Asia Wilson went down with an injury and went to the locker room.
Yes, she did. It almost looks like an ankle injury. Could be a hyperextension. She looks like she grabbed at a shin, then at an ankle. She seemed to be in pain, but not that much pain. But still, that doesn't tell you anything. And we're at the half, 35-25. From a body language standpoint, Phil, it took South Carolina about 13 minutes to get into this basketball game.
You can't do that against UConn.
And you can't do that against UConn. As we said before, you can't get off to a slow start. And they've left about 4 points on the free throw line. So UConn enjoys a 10-point lead. But if South Carolina can get back in this ball game, they have to come out with the body language they came out with in the last 10 to 12 minutes of the first half.
All right, we'll get a recap from K-Mac here in just a couple of moments. Any luck with the voice yet there, LB? Trying to hook up with Mick. We've been in communication with him, but we do now have him. Okay, let's bring in the voice of the Panthers, Mick Mixon, as the season is now over. Disappointing way, but getting to the Super Bowl for a second time in the short life of this franchise is quite an accomplishment. Good to have you with us, Mick. I know you're dog-tired. We appreciate you taking a couple of minutes. Just your thoughts as you reflect on what you saw and what you called yesterday.
Appreciate you having me on, Corn. I'm talking to you now from my desk at Bank of America Stadium on the second floor. The team bus has just rolled in about 7, and it's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in sports. Thousands of people lining the streets, Mint Street from a few blocks away. The parking lot was jammed, several thousand people. I mean, you had to sort of shake yourself for a second and say, okay, we didn't win the game, right? I mean, this is just people thanking us for the players and coaches for the body of work. But it almost makes you feel a little worse in a way because you start thinking your mind goes to that place of, man, think what this celebration would feel like had the Panthers done enough to win that game.
Absolutely. Why do you think they had such a difficult time scoring touchdowns against – I know that defense was great from Denver, but, I mean, this is an offense that had scored on everybody. Why did they have a hard time yesterday?
I don't know, Corn. I described it on the broadcast yesterday as almost the feeling of you're in a band and you're playing fairly well, but there's just one instrument or one string or one player that's not quite in tune. It seemed as though it was a different thing each series, whether it was a turnover, a sack, fumble, a blown coverage, a pass that wasn't caught cleanly and allowed Denver's defense to get there. The Panthers had an uncharacteristic 12 penalties for over 100 yards in the game. I just think the Panthers' joy was missing. You know, we were never up. We never led in the game. That enthusiasm, that effervescence we've played with all year long. I just never really felt it. Did you?
No, I didn't see it either. I thought the team was tight and never really got loose and got into its rhythm.
Yeah, I thought at halftime we were fine. You know, down 13-7, 6-point game. Made every mistake in the world, getting kicked off to start the second half. And in my mind, the game was really lost in the third quarter when the Panthers drove the ball down despite some missed opportunities to get a touchdown. Had a field goal opportunity they drew down on and missed that. And then the next possession was a turnover after driving the ball again. And before you know it, the third quarter was over. Denver did just enough with their offense. And they didn't do a lot, but they did just enough to run some clock, make a few first downs, and have that third quarter just evaporate. And then all of a sudden you look up and Denver's got a 9-point lead in the fourth quarter with that defense. It was hard to overcome.
All right, much talk about Cam and his performance and the scrutiny he's gotten since yesterday for his performance and also the post-game interview session.
Oh, it's going to be there. Yeah, this is going to be for the next day or two, the next news cycle. It's going to get talked about, and I can understand it from both sides. I can understand a hyper-competitive athlete's frustration and the dreams and the disappointment, and now all of a sudden here's a crowd of reporters with the mics in their faces. I think, probably Cam rewinds the tape on it. He might think maybe he could have handled it better as well. But, I think, I don't know. I think it was just a frustrating evening for him. And he was better. It looked like he did engage with the crowd a little bit just a little bit ago when we came in, managed a smile or two, and the MVP chant broke out. But, that's just kind of the way he is. He's not – you're looking for a quarterback that sulks in the way that you want him to. He's probably not your guy.
All right, thanks again to the voice of the Panthers, Vic Mixon, for being with us tonight and all season long. Loved his contributions to Sports Talk this season. And you know what? Don't be surprised if the Panthers are playing next February in Houston. There's no reason not to think so, with assuming the team isn't decimated by free agency and retirements and things of that nature. But they're going to have the quarterback back. The running back will be back. Those receivers were young this year. They'll get Benjamin back. Maybe they'll draft a very good receiver to add to the mix. That defense will be back for the most part. So they'll be a favorite. I think they already are one of the favorites to get to the Super Bowl next year. All right, the USC women, they have their work cut out for them in the second half. Let's go to K-Mac over at the Colonial Life Arena to fill us in on why they're trailing by 10 at the K-Mac.
Breaking news, Corn. UConn's pretty darn good. How about that?
Yeah.
They are impressive. Man, like we talked about, the gap between number one and number two can be pretty big when you're talking about women's college basketball. And UConn was far superior in that first half. Everything the Gamecocks got, they had to fight, scratch, and claw for in terms of baskets. And UConn was running their regular offense and making it look pretty easy at times. Asia Wilson has 9 points, but she left late in the second quarter with an ankle injury. She's been favoring that for a while and went down. So we'll have to keep an eye on what her status is coming back. But it's been difficult for the Gamecocks. They turned it over 11 times, really struggled getting into any kind of flow, getting into any kind of rhythm on offense, and every time they looked like they were going to try to make a run, UConn right back down the court to do something big, and Brianna Stewart with 13 points in the first half is as good as advertised.
All right, so what do you think Dawn Staley's telling her team here at the break? What do they have to shore up to make a run here in the second half?
Well, I think they're going to have to figure out a way to make it a little tougher on Stewart. She's making it pretty easy out there. I mean, they're getting layups on a lot of their buckets, so they're going to have to figure out their defense. Maybe they go to a zone and try to make UConn hit some outside shots. And offensively, they just got to get into a flow. They're kind of holding the ball at the top of the key, and the shot clock's winding down. They're going deep. Maybe be a little more aggressive on the offensive side.
All right. The fans hanging in there with them, or can you sense a little bit of the air coming out of their balloon?
Well, it came out. They were down by as many as 15, but they made a little push there to cut it to 10 at the half. So they did finish on an uptick, and I think the fans are holding out hope that something special can happen in the second half.
All right, K-Mac, thanks. And you can follow K-Mac on Twitter at Sports Talk SC. In the second half of that game, post-game coverage on our website, sportstalksc.com. Same here. I'll be tweeting from the Clemson-Notre Dame game, Sports Talk SC, and post-game coverage at sportstalksc.com. Final thoughts from you, Pro?
Clemson has a chance tonight. Coming off that emotional win at home against North Carolina, having to make the trip to Greenville, Clemson should press them early and use their big people inside to get them in foul trouble, and they win this ball game tonight.
All right, it'll be on ESPNU at 9. Thanks for being with us. Thank you, Larkin Belton. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.